Hello, and thanks for joining me at IT Home Lab Online. In this video, we're going to set up a couple of virtual machines on Proxmox. My previous video, I showed you the Proxmox installation, so feel free to jump back to that one if you haven't seen it yet. And in this one, I will show you how to create an Ubuntu virtual machine as well as a Windows virtual machine. I'll use these for future labs as well, but just to give you an idea of how easy it is to use Proxmox. Now, let's get started. First thing we're going to do is open up the web browser and go to our Proxmox server. Now, mine's remembered it, but from the previous video, you'll see you need to go to the IP address and port number 8006. Once you've gone into there, under server view, expand down your Proxmox server, select your local storage, find your ISO images, and from there I'm going to upload a couple of ISO images from my local laptop. I'll select the files, browse to my inventory USB that I use with my ISOs in it, and first of all I'm going to put on Ubuntu Server. So open that one and click upload. Now that will take a little while because I'm uploading it over Wi-Fi on my local laptop, even though my Proxmox server is connected to Ethernet. So I might pause the video there and resume once it's done. Okay, so now the first image has been uploaded. I've taken the liberty of connecting the other one. This is a multi-access interface, so you can access the Proxmox environment from multiple machines at the same time. So I've got a second machine running at the moment that's uploading that Windows ISO for us, so we can continue on. So now that we've got our ISO file created, we're going to create a new virtual machine. We've only got the one node, so we can install it on here. The default ID for the very first machine is 100. We don't need to change anything there. We can give the virtual machine a name. I'm going to call this one Docker 01 because I'm going to use this for another video later on where I install Docker and give you a demonstration of how easy that is to use with compose files. Resource pool, we will select, well, we don't need to select a resource pool, it will choose it automatically, and we don't have high availability enabled, so we'll just leave that blank. Next, on to the operating system. By default, it's chosen Linux for us. We'll choose our ISO image. That's the only one we've got available at the moment. Once the Windows one is finished uploading, it will come on there. And we'll leave the kernel as it is and say next. Graphics card, we'll use default. Everything else we can leave as default for now. SCSI controller, yeah, we'll leave that as default. Next. Disks. So here's where we choose what size disk we want. By default, it's chosen 32 gig, which is probably okay for a Linux server installation with no graphical interface. So we'll leave it on that for now. Obviously, you can change that to any size you like. It will minimize the amount of storage used by your disks and grow them as needed. So you can go over your hard drive limit, but just be wary that if you're running multiple machines, they will be using up the space potentially. So we'll leave that as it is and say next. Now we're going to choose our CPU type. We're going to leave it as 64-bit. We've got, I believe this is 8 cores. So we might just increase the number of cores by one. Yeah. If you increase your sockets and your cores, it multiplies out to the total number of cores over here. But we'll just leave it as a dual core for now. Again, it's a server text-only installation, so there's no graphical interface on it. Memory, we're going to up the memory on it for now. You sort of really need at least 4 gig. Again, you can you can overinvest on your memory. So if you've got 32 gig available, you can allocate 64 gig and it will only use what it needs, but it will max out at whatever you set that memory size to right there. So we'll go next. Network, so this is telling us it's going to use the bridge network, which is what we want it to do. That way it'll get an IP address from my local network once it's connected and installed. So we'll say next, quickly go through, check everything looks okay, which it does. We can also tell it to start once it creates it. That's entirely up to you. Click finish. And it'll take a moment, and once it's done you can see this machine number 100 has been created and it's running. So now what we can do, now that I've clicked on here, you can see the little play symbol on it. We can connect to the console and we can see exactly what it's doing. I'm going to go full screen. By default it's got the timer to start installing, so I'll hit enter. Okay, I'm going to choose English as my language. Just note that it does have a scroll bar on the side there, so I'm happy with English. I'm going to install Ubuntu Server, so I don't need to change anything there. I'm going to use the Ethernet adapter. You can see it's detected an IP address, so I can hit enter there. I don't need to set up a proxy address for my network. If you do for yours, that's where you would set it. Now I'm going to let it to search and for the mirrors and test that they're okay. If you try to skip past that, you do get some errors throw up that will let that complete and go done. Now we're going to format the disk. We're going to use the entire disk. I'm not going to bother with using LVM. I just want stock disk, which means that I can then potentially mount it on another machine and access it fairly easily. So it's telling me that it's going to auto partition it. It's 32 gig in total. It's going to create a 1 meg BIOS grub spacer and allocate the rest of the disk to the operating system. So I'm going to go done and continue. The reason why you get these warnings, because if you are using it, the installer on a genuine device with a proper disk, it will wipe the disk entirely. In this case, we're using a virtual disk, so it's not that critical. Now we're going to create our first username. This user by default is an administrator of the machine. I'm just going to use the generic name of Ubuntu. Down here, I'm going to match the name that I used for my virtual machine. So I'm going to call it Docker 01. username Ubuntu, and select a unique password for here. And tab down to done, hit enter. And I'm not going to enable Ubuntu Pro. That's a subscription version that I only need the free version for what I'm using. I am going to install OpenSSH Server. This means that I'll be able to remotely access this machine via SSH. I don't want to add any additional software here, so I can say done, and away we go. While it's doing that, I'll switch back to my other menu and just see if the other disk has finished uploading. You can see here how much of the allocated resources are being used at the moment. Once the install is finished, it'll need to do a restart, and you can see that will drop down significantly when it's just sitting idle. I'm going to go back to my ISO images, and it doesn't look like it's completed uploading yet, but that's okay. So I'll switch back to here and wait for this to complete. You can see installation is quite quick. Proxmox uses very little resources to manage itself. There are other products out there like VMware, Hyper-V that you can use. They all have their limitations. I've only started using Proxmox recently, and I found that it's given me a significant performance boost on my virtual machines. Now that that's complete, we can reboot. We get a warning about not being able to eject the media because it's a mounted USB stick, so that's fine. So we can just hit enter here, and then when it reboots, you can see it's booted into the Ubuntu operating system. Now from here, I'm going to open up a command prompt and make sure that I can SSH into Ubuntu. That's my username on this Ubuntu machine, and the IP address, which is 10.0.3.68, and say yes to accept the fingerprint because it's the first time I've connected, and enter my password. Okay, so you can see I've signed in now. Now what I'm going to do is check to see what updates are available, which I do whenever I create a new I've just been disconnected. Let's try connect again. Okay. So you can see there's 57 packages available to update, which makes sense because it's when they release the ISO, they don't perpetually update it. So when you install it the first time, you need to do your initial update. Now, before I run my update, first thing I'm going to do is install tmux. Tmux and answer yes so that it doesn't ask me any questions. It's already installed, great. So I'm going to open up a tmux session. Tmux is a terminal multi-user session What this does is basically it runs on the host, not on your operating system. So when you try to do updates and things like that, if you update your network drivers, you'll get disconnected. If you disconnect from your session while it's updating your network drivers, the network drivers don't complete the installation. So I like to do my updates while I'm in a TMUX session because that runs locally on the server. I'll still get disconnected, but I can rejoin the session. So I'll show you how that happens now. Upgrade -y. So that's pulling down all the available updates that it can and installing them. Okay, so in that instance, it didn't update anything on the network, so I wasn't disconnected. If I was disconnected, which I can demonstrate here, so I will drop out of my TMUX session by doing Control B for Bravo, D for Delta, and you can see I'm detached from it, and exit. So I'm not connected to that Docker server anymore. When I reconnect, with the correct password and do a TMUX A to attach to an existing session, you can see it's come back to that interface. It's just completed finishing the downloads. So that's it for that. I'm just going to now check the status of the Windows upload. And it hasn't completed it yet. So I might pause the video there and I'll resume once that Windows session has uploaded. Okay, now that file's finished uploading. So what we can do is create a new virtual machine. We're going to call this one just Windows 11. Select our operating system, choose our ISO image, which is now available. Change our type to Microsoft Windows. And that's what we want, 11, 22, 25. 22, 25 are server versions. 11 is the current release of Windows at the time of recording this video. We don't need to add any additional drivers for now, so we'll go next, system, okay. We can leave those as default there. TPM we'll set to, and EFI storage we'll set to here as well. Going to use compatible version of 2. And this is because it's Windows 11, it requires TPM. You do have options of modifying the ISO to run Windows 11 on non-TPM machines. Not supported by Microsoft though, not best practices. Minimum size for Windows 11 is 64 gig, so we might just round this up a little bit and make it say 80 gig. Then we can go next. The reason why I do give it a little bit more space is that Windows updates can take quite a lot of storage and a little bit of download. So if you want to keep this machine maintained and up to date, it's best to add that extra disk space. For this one, Windows is a bit more power hungry as well. So we'll give it 4 cores instead of the 2. And on this one, we'll give it 8 gig of RAM. Which I believe is the minimum as well for Windows 11. We're going to leave it on the bridge network, which will work for us. I'm going to set it to the VMX.net3 driver, which is compatible with VMware. I've had more success with that in the past. Check that everything looks okay. And we're going to start after it's created. Okay, now while that's creating, I'm just going to go here. Just have a look at our resources. So we can see machine number 101 has spun up, and that's how much memory it's using. So this actually has 12 CPU cores and 32 gig available. So 8 gig should be fine to allocate to that machine without having to shut down our Docker machine. If you've got less RAM available, you can certainly trim these back a little bit. I tend to try and give them their minimum requirements for the installation. Just means it's a bit more streamlined. Don't get any delays. So sorry, I need to do a reboot on that. So we should be able to Control Alt Delete on the keyboard. And we actually need to hit a key during the installation. I'm going to, actually I'll change it to English Australia. Next, keyboard will be US. I'm going to install Windows 11. It's a new machine. I don't have a product key. And for this demonstration, I'm going to install Windows 11 Pro. Accept the agreement. Make sure you do use legitimate product keys for Windows products, especially in your production environment. Okay, so we've got an 80 gig disk. We're going to use the entire disk. Not going to do anything fancy with this one. You could potentially set it up as a multi-boot, but you are running in a virtual environment, so it makes more sense to have your separate operating systems in separate virtual machines. This won't take very long. I might pause it if it does look like it's taking a long time, but okay, so it did take a bit longer than expected, so I did pause it. It got to 77% and hung there for a little while and then did a reboot. So my plan was to resume the video when it got to about 95%, but this is what's happened now. So it's obviously doing some further installation in the background. And I might pause it again here just so that it doesn't take up too much time of awkward silence. Okay, so it's just doing another reboot. Windows does do a few reboots when it's as part of its installation process. Okay, so for now I'll name this device Windows 11. So next, which will cause it to do another restart. But that'll just make it easier to find on the network later on. You can skip naming it if you choose so. Okay. So I'm going to choose Setup for Work or School. The reason why I'm doing this is because I don't want to link it to a Microsoft account as yet. So I'll choose Sign In Options and say Domain Join instead, and then I'll create a local account called User. By default, this user account will be an administrator. I'm not going to set a password at this point. And the reason for that is I don't want to set up security questions. I can set the password once I've logged in the first time, which I will do. Okay, so it is downloading some updates. So again, I'll pause the video here because this will take a little bit of time. Okay, so now we've got Windows installed. What I'm going to do is first of all, open up a command prompt and find out my IP address. Okay, so that's my live IP address on my network. So the next thing I'm going to do is go into my settings and search for remote desktop. And enable it. Before I do that though, I need to change my password. So I will do Control Alt and delete. Change password. In order to use remote desktop, you do need to set a password. So now if I go back to, enable remote desktop and confirm. And because I'm not on a domain yet, I'm going to untick require network level authentication. And now what I should be able to do is run the remote desktop connection client on my host laptop, put in the IP address of my newly created VM, put in the username of user and the password that I just set, And if I say remember, it will remember the username, so I'll just be prompted for the password next time. And I'll tell it not to ask for a certificate each time. So now I basically have a way of getting my virtual machine that appears windowed on the console browser to being full screen. You can use this to remotely access your home network if you install something like Tailscale, which is basically Tailscale is a private networking tool that creates a network amongst the devices that you've installed it on. And I'll do that in a future lab. So that's all for this one. So if you have enjoyed this or gotten anything of value, please like and subscribe and click the notification bell. And thanks for watching.